Thanks for listening to this presentation on starting government blockchain projects. My name is Tom Plunkett, and I'm going to be talking about how government blockchain projects can be performed in a faster and easier approach. I myself have seen several government projects that I'll be using throughout this presentation as examples. So to begin with, I think we're all pretty much familiar with the fact that today we have fractured data silos in many enterprise ecosystems where we've got multiple agencies, companies, lots of different records that are scattered across systems of record. And all of this might be part of a single supply chain or business process, but you're maintaining all of these different locations where the data, in many cases, contradicts itself. And there's an expensive reconciliation process that's inefficient and costs a lot and is vulnerable to attacks. Blockchain, however, can solve that problem. You can bring in an enterprise blockchain that's resilient, scalable, and it becomes a shared single source of truth with non-repudiation, consensus, traceability, and immutability. As opposed to the old days where we called our systems sources of truth, they really weren't. Instead, they were a local source of truth. Whereas now with blockchain, we can get a true shared single source of truth with non-repudiation and immutability, traceability, and consensus. So when you talk about blockchain, you hear people talk about a wide range of different blockchains. Many people talk about the public blockchains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, the cryptocurrency, permissionless anonymous blockchains. However, there's a range of blockchains. You've got private blockchains that are typically in a single organization. You've got federated or consortium blockchains, which might be among multiple organizations. And you could even have a public permission blockchain, which is multiple organizations, but still with public access. Now, depending on the type of blockchain you choose, can have significant impact on the applicants who can participants who can participate. It can have an impact on performance and security from a transaction speed perspective, and so on. The public blockchains require significant security protocols, which results in a relatively slow transaction speed. Bitcoin, for example, can do something like 4,000 transactions every 10 minutes. Whereas Visa can do something on the order of 50,000 transactions a second. That's quite a big difference in transaction processing. Generally speaking, the more private the blockchain, the faster the transaction speed is going to be. Furthermore, private and federated blockchains can rely on additional security capabilities that your public blockchains cannot. So my focus in this lecture is going to be on private and federated blockchains, which are more efficient than the public blockchains and are easier to secure. So why is blockchain a compelling solution for government agencies? Well, government agencies are attracted to the non-repudiation because that reduces risk of fraud. They're interested in the tamper-proof, tamper-evident records for auditing purposes and for proving that, there's been no manipulation of the public records. Having this shared single source of truth is very important from a transparency perspective for the government, as well as having faster transactions and improved citizen experience and lower transaction costs and reduce risk of human errors and fraud. All of these are valuable benefits for why government agencies are adopting blockchain technology. Now, there are many possible blockchain scenarios. Some of the questions you can think about when you're considering typical blockchain scenarios focus on questions about Do your business processes cross divisional or organizational boundaries? Do cross-system discrepancies impact your operations? Is there less than full trust among the various parties? Um, some typical enterprise scenarios for blockchain include reducing friction in transactions, securely maintaining decentralized records, tracking products and materials, and so on. But one thing to keep in mind whenever you look at a suggested checklist of questions to consider for blockchain scenarios is that this is very new technology. Imagine, for example, we're talking about the World Wide Web. And imagine it's back to 1995, some 25 years ago when the World Wide Web was brand new. Back then, there were lots of early adopters who were writing checklists about when you should consider building a website. Today, nobody really looks at a checklist like that because web technology is well understood and it's mature. But blockchain is not well understood and mature. And so we do have a lot of these checklists and people are trying to apply them to see if blockchain is a good choice for their problem. And the unfortunate answer is, while these checklists help, they don't really answer the question. Because blockchain technology is so new that there are no checklists that are optimal for determining whether or not blockchain is truly a good fit for your problem scenario. Instead, you'll have to look at the use case yourself, try it out, and then discover. If we went back to my example of 1995 in the web, no one would have said, oh, a great use case for the web is social media, or a great use case for the web is search engines, or a great use case for the internet is going to be smartphones. None of those technologies and use cases had really been conceived of back in 1995 at the early days of the web. Facebook, YouTube, and on and on. All of the modern technologies we use today on the web simply weren't conceived of back in 1995. And it's the same thing with blockchain. There are many, many applications on blockchain that will be coming in the future that we simply can't conceive of today. And so any checklist you see like this one, you should always take with a grain of salt. It's got some useful guidance in it, but there are many potential use cases for blockchain technology that aren't covered by a checklist like this. So I'm going to walk through a very straightforward use case of an HHS blockchain project to give you an idea of how rapidly you can bring a blockchain project into the federal government and bring it into production. So here's an example of rapid blockchain implementation using cloud computing. We did a first demo of a prototype to Health and Human Services and Abbott Labs in September of last year, a year ago, September 2020. 3 months later, we won first place against over 35 competing solutions in the HHS Design-a-thon, basically a hackathon where we showed our design off and various parties voted on it. And we ended up winning first place for this blockchain project that we call the COVID-19 Immutable Test Results Blockchain Project. Basically providing immutability and non-repudiation and auditing capability for COVID-19 test results. So for the pipeline between the labs and the government agencies that would then display those test results to the citizens. And this way you can prove there's been no manipulation of the test results between the labs that originally entered the test results all the way to the government dashboards. In January 2021, only 4 months after our first demo of our prototype, this project was live in production. That's how fast you can go into production if you're using a blockchain implementation that's based on cloud computing technologies. By March 2021, 2 months later, we had a conditional authority to operate granted, and we were able to put PII data on the blockchain. In May 2021, this project won an innovation award from ACT-IAC, a government industry think tank, competing against over 75 other government projects. By September 2021, 1 year later, we're still in production. We're approaching a full authority to operate. And at this point, millions of COVID-19 test results have been processed through this HHS COVID-19 blockchain. And so that's a tremendous amount of capability within a single year. Had we not gone with cloud computing, had we gone with a traditional on-premise infrastructure, it could have delayed our project by at least 6 months. If you've got a very long cycle for developing your project, if you're planning to develop your project over multiple years, then certainly you can consider going a traditional on-premise technology and not bother with cloud computing. However, if you've got a rapid need to bring your project into fruition, if you want to rapidly innovate, cloud computing can really help. And so that's the benefit of cloud for this project, particularly when we're dealing with this fast-changing pandemic. Cloud computing really solved many of the problems we faced. Here's a look at some of the more details of the project we did with HHS. There were concerns with current test submissions. Many of the labs had ad hoc processes and tools for publishing their results to the government. There were human errors in the data, mistransfers of data. There wasn't built-in tracking between the lab tests and the government. There were lots of risks and concerns about fraud or data tampering, manipulation, and there was inconsistent treatment of patient health information and PII. And that becomes even more important when you consider testing outside the lab. Home test kits at venues, like event venues. So there's a lot of concerns with the test submissions, and so we're bringing in this blockchain capability to provide tracking and auditability, as well as assurance of what's really going on. So the blockchain nodes in this blockchain are lab dedicated or shared for at anywhere reports. There's public key signed messages for non-repudiation and integrity of the results. There's local ledger copies. So, you can do verification, the data hasn't been manipulated. This is distributed ledger architecture enhanced with chain validation. There's multiple products here that are being used to actually pull this off besides blockchain. But just to give you an idea of walking through the network here, on the left-hand side, we've got Abbott Labs as a reporting node into the blockchain. Down below, we've got a Waters HHS Gov shared node that many different vendors can use. We've got other labs that can come in through other nodes. Over on the right, we've got an Oracle blockchain platform node for HHS, and there's a CDC node. The HHS node then can publish data to HHS Protect, the public data hub. Other components like analytics can be applied to process the information. So that gives you a basic idea of what the architecture looks like. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a number of different labs submitting data: Abbott, Illum, LifePoint, and so on. Now, that's just one example of a blockchain project in the government. There are obviously many other blockchain projects in the government. Here's an example of some of the other projects that Oracle's been working on with different government agencies, both in the US and abroad. I'm not going to go through all of these various projects, but you can see things like visa status, lottery tickets, artificial intelligence, machine learning, audit tracking, e-voting, secure logistics documents, export-import certificates. I mean, there's a lot of interest in blockchain projects around supply chain, identity tracking, taxes, scholarships, identity sharing, and so on. There's a lot of potential use cases for government agencies, and a lot of government agencies in the US and around the world are experimenting with blockchain in different areas. So again, Oracle blockchain is a great approach to rapidly take a concept and turn it into a production system. We designed an Oracle blockchain cloud service as well as an on-premise version that's easy to deploy, easy to integrate with back office, easy to secure, and then easy to monitor and manage. Essentially, we took the open source Hyperledger Fabric project and added some enterprise capabilities to it to make it extremely easy to adopt and deploy in production rapidly. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to my suggestions for how to rapidly start a government project regarding the blockchain. If you're interested in learning more about Oracle blockchain, feel free to visit some of these websites or to download a free version, a free copy of Oracle Blockchain Platform Enterprise or Oracle Blockchain Platform Cloud at those links. Thank you for your time and enjoy the conference.